Now, will I be able to see the chat? I think I will.
We're live now, and you can go to the chat. You might have to go to the live event to see it, but I'll read out any questions that are in there. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're live, and we're going to start tonight. Welcome. My name is VV. I'm the administrator of SavageRifts.com, but you're here to see Sean here. So Sean is Sean Roberson. We just went through that, as that's the pronunciation. He's the editor for Savage Rifts for Pinnacle Entertainment Group, an author, a contributor, a former missionary, a Chinese analyst, an all-around great guy. I just made that last part up. I've only known him for a little bit. So it's great to have him here with us tonight. And we've got questions, Sean, from our community that you saw already in our forum. So we're going to take questions from the live chat. And we're good to go. So I see Jody's here. Jody, thank you for coming. I know you have an early bedtime, so is there any question you want us to ask Sean first? You get that in, and we'll get going. So, Sean, man, you saw the questions. Anything you want to say, maybe as an introduction, and we'll dive right in.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a little thing that I wrote up when I was talking to Beacon on the Voice of Hope podcast, and we're going to be finishing that, I think, this coming week, finishing that whole rundown of just kind of going through everything with him. But I do have some notes on the design philosophy, the basic design philosophy that I've been trying to adhere to. If you want, I can go through that a little bit as kind of like a preface so that people will know where I'm coming from on that end.
Yeah, man. Tell us the philosophy. I think we've got a lot of philosophers or so-called philosophers on our group, and they'd be happy to hear that.
Yeah. Rogue philosophers, rogue scholars. Yeah, so there's a few things I wanted to talk about. So a lot of people will ask, well, where do the sources of different changes come from? And then they ask, what are the primary things that we consider when we're working on it, on riffs for Savage Worlds? And the sources of the changes, there's two big ones. It's usually from fans is a big source of the changes. A lot of times it comes to two big categories. I would say one is game balance, right? If we're missing some balance, people notice that really fast. Oddly, though, that one is an interesting one because a lot of times people will complain about something else, and then really I'll be hearing the feedback about A and realize that it's really being caused by B being out of balance or out of whack. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other big thing is lore issues. So I think the original design team did a really good job of creating a really cool game that'd be really fun, and you could present it very kind of encapsulated in the original 3 books. But players that are more familiar with the crazy expansive lore and canon of riffs, or that want to move outside of very defined campaigns, which are about the interaction between Castle Refuge, the Coalition, and the Federation of Magic, especially have brought up a lot of different lore issues. And so those are some of the things that I think we need to get right in Savage Rifts to make sure that it's as rifty as Rifts can be, right? The other big change, besides coming from fans, is from Pinnacle Entertainment Group, which I call PEG. And that I include myself when I discuss this, avenue of changes or updates. So one of the big things is the Suede philosophy is very different. And in a lot of ways, when you really come down to it, when it really boils down to it, the reason that the Adventure Edition Suede is the way it is because Shane is doing his best to, and the whole team are doing their best to integrate the feedback from fans, right, to make it the best game possible. And crunchier beyond that, the other big thing that'll come from Pinnacle is, hey, we've got these new mechanics and they function differently. And sometimes, Savage Worlds is very elegant, especially the Adventure Edition. So if that's the foundation that the House of Riffs, that Savage Rifts is built on, then sometimes even minute or slight changes in that foundation in the mechanics can affect how we want to best, or how we should best resolve different things in the Rift setting. So beyond that, so we've got, our changes come from fans or they come from Pinnacle. Usually it's game balance or lore when it really boils down to it. And then when we're resolving the issues, there's a few things that are really important. And this is kind of my priority list. And the first thing I think of is staying true to Kevin Symbietta's original vision and themes for the setting. So I think that takes precedence because it's a setting. Then beyond that, the next thing is to keep it fast, furious, and fun. Make sure that we have elegant rules and adhere to that Suede foundation. But that's something that's really big for Shane and I. And Shane really impressed upon me. So we want this to definitely be that match that's, well, I think it's a match made in heaven, Savage Rifts, or Rifts and Savage Worlds, for a lot of people. But I think that the Suede foundation, I really like Suede. It's my favorite version of Savage Worlds. And so making sure that yeah, sometimes we've had to kind of change the DNA of Savage Rifts a little bit, but I think it's going to be worth it in the long run. And then the third thing is, I talked about themes that Kevin Symbieta had in his original vision. The themes and role diversity, because the iconic characters, I think the iconic frameworks is a really good way to put it, because iconic really is about being thematic. And you can't have iconic characters without role diversity. It's one of the things is that characters in Risk can be so powerful that if you're not careful, they can do a little bit of everything. And so making sure that we've kind of broken out the role diversity a little bit, which has, taken a lot of work and community feedback. Some of the themes that I think are really important and that drip off the cover of the original Rifts RPG and supplements, and yeah, you got yours too. So I think the Americana, and I don't mean kitschy Americana, but I mean talking the post-apocalypse, the nuclear scare, the Cold War is a big theme that influenced Rifts, obviously. But there's also big American themes revolving around slavery, racism, freedom, justice, the Republic, what the Republic means. Then another big one is survival horror. And one of the big considerations there is you need tension to be able to create any type of horror. You need to have some tension, and that has to come from somewhere. And so that means that there has to be some sort of opposition at play, or the characters can't be too overpowered. Cosmic horror is another one, and human augmentation is another big theme. Some people talk about it too. I think that Kevin Symbieta calls Rifts a thinking man's game, and I think that Savage Rifts, that's something that we work to live up to as well. That in the end, I hope that some of the most powerful characters in a campaign will be not just the combat powerhouses, but the characters that specialize in skills and apply professional knowledge or expert knowledge to the different situations. And I think you're going to see that as you play through the different plot point campaigns that are coming in the 3 new books. And you're going to see a lot of opportunities for non-combat hosses. I think everybody should be able to, participate in combat in one way or another, but non-combat hosses to shine. And then the fourth consideration, this one's kind of important too, as we're doing all this, is making sure that we lay a great foundation for stuff to come in the future. So.
Great, thank you, man. That's a good kind of 4-point analysis of where you're coming from, and gives a background, I think, to people. Listen, I know we got some bad news to deliver off the top. You and I talked beforehand, and the Psy Ghost is out, right?
Yeah.
It's gone. It's too overpowered.
No, it's still coming.
Oh, good. Mike wanted me to ask about that. How's it going to work? Is it just going to have psionic intangibility, or is it going to be like, have it be able to do it at will?
Yeah. We just kind of dialed that one in. No, I'm just kidding. So let me pull it up actually.
Screen share. Screen share.
I don't know how to make that work. Let me see. Scroll. Here we go. So basically, the big thing about the Psyghost is that they can ghost. So it acts as activating the intangibility and invisibility powers at the base level for no roll or ISP.
Oh wow!
Can't use any modifiers with the ghosting power, but yeah, the ghosting ability is an innate ability, and so you can do it once per round as a free action.
Good. That's a good compromise. I noticed that
You can ghost more than once in a round.
Right.
So
you have to take an action the next time.
You can be ghosted, become tangible, do something, ghost again. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to be crazy powerful if players really realize what they're able to do there. But I think that fits the original lore. But that's basically how the ghosting ability works.
Good. I noticed a lot of originally Savage Rifts you could see under the hood the superpowers companion, almost like they were just supers with a really, really good flavor on top of it, But now I see this Tomorrow Legion's Player's Guide trying to keep the core powers as much as possible, the way the gifted is done and different things like that. Is that a deliberate thing, or is it just because the superpowers companion isn't swayed yet? Or
well, that's a good question. I know that the original design team they really leveraged the superpowers companion. I mean, that's how we basically got iconic frameworks. And I think that was great. But there's two influences there. One, I don't know exactly what the superpowers companion is going to look like. I'm not writing it, at least Shane hasn't asked me to. So, and I'm really busy with this. So, but the thing is like, that's I don't know what might change. B, I mean, a lot of different things that were in like the super or the sci-fi companion, like the racial build rules. I mean, they're now in Suede, right? So if
stop showing that off. You're such a jerk.
I am a jerk, aren't I?
On every podcast.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it looks great, and that's why I show it off, because I just think it looks great in person. I hope everybody that is watching this has ordered a copy and it's inbound. But the other thing about Suede is that, I mean, that is what we have right now, right? So, and that is the core rules. So sometimes when these questions come up, the way that we write things, or the way I write things as I edit it or go through it, is and I mean, this is something that is basically a mandate from Shane, is that we want it to be at the core of it, not another supplement at the core of Savage Rifts. Does that make sense? We want Suede, the Adventure Edition, to be at the core of Savage Rifts, and a lot that's actually empowered Savage Rifts a lot, I think. But yeah, it is interesting. I think that Gifted, the new Arcane background Gifted, is a great way to have supers in a setting without them not having to spend any power points to activate abilities and stuff like that. We've also have a really greatly expanded roster of powers in the Adventure Edition, so that's been great too.
Great, man. Thanks so much for that, and I'm sure everyone will be happy the Psyghost is off the table. Michael, stop asking me about it. So the first question that actually came up in the live chat was, what's happening with power armor and robot armor jocks? I assume the Mars packages, you talked about maybe changing those a little bit or tweaking them based on feedback. Is anything new on that?
I really want them to make sure that they have, we've done this with a lot of the Mars frameworks. I don't think that every single Mars framework needs to have a special ability, right? I don't think the Cybernetic Techno Warrior needs one. I'm happy with where my brain's freezing up. City Rat is at. I think the City Rat's in a cool spot right now, or like the Wilderness Scout. But I do think that the Robot Ace and the Power Armor Ace do need something else. There's been some really good suggestions. I haven't actually written up an update for that yet. That is officially going in to the next revision of the book. So we'll see where that goes, but that is going to get updated. So that is still one of those things that I really would like a lot of feedback. If players have ideas, please go to the Pinnacle Entertainment forums. Give us your ideas, because that's one of those ones where I've seen that some people have really great ideas. And I definitely put out that call for anyone that might have different thoughts on it.
Good. I'm sure that'll make everyone happy. They still have a chance to have a say. Somebody asked, because we were talking about the difference between superpowers and Suede and all the different changes, and Suede being the foundation. So what's the biggest Suede change that kind of impacted your work as you were, updating Savage Rifts?
Without a doubt, I would say that it's power modifiers. That's the one that really jumped out to me when you asked that. I think that, we had a write-up for Arcana and Mysticism that Sean Bercher had done, which was basically something that I've seen is very similar to a lot of really great fans have made write-ups of. This is essentially how you turn mega powers into mega power modifiers and take the math that was there from the PowerPoints that was already listed, for instance, in the first edition of Savage Rifts. For the mega powers, this is how you convert it over. But Shane and that was the approach I took, was yeah, that's great, that's perfect, right? But then Shane said that he really wanted it to be based on the math and the DNA of DNA is my term, but the math of the Adventure Edition, and use that as the base. So that was one of the things that we really worked on very hard, actually, prior to and then during my time when I was visiting out in Arizona at the Pinnacle office. So that's one of the ones that took a lot of work, and there was a lot of revisions and a lot of rewriting of power modifiers and tweaks with that, and also just hashing out how it was going to work. Why, for instance, with most mega power modifiers, you just get mega damage for free. But unlike the first edition, certain powers don't get. There were powers like Blast and Burst, which were automatically mega damage, and that's not the case anymore. So you are paying a premium by getting that Master of Magic or Master Psionic edge, and then that's basically saying, yeah, now I'm here ready to play with the big boys in power armor and cyborgs and dragons and giant demons. And so you get a bit of a discount there, but you're now paying the way, if you look at the math, the way that things like Bolt increase in number of dice and stuff, it's all very, very based off of the original Suede formula, which was, a little bit of a different, because it's kind of like a retcon of how everything works, right? So there's a lot of effort and thought put into that, probably a lot more than it even looks like sometimes. But yeah, that was one of the really big ones. And then that also meant that trappings are approached very differently as well, because what used to be trappings are now power modifiers. So instead of saying, well, I'm going to trap my attack with ice so that it slows down someone's movement, now you have a power modifier that does that. And the trapping is literally just the element of it. It doesn't have a listed effect like it did in Deluxe, for instance. And so that's another consideration there, is that it's now a very mix and match. But when I wrote up the rules for the meditations and rituals and expanded on the base stuff that had been worked up for Arcana and Mysticism, wow, I mean, those power modifiers get really important as they mix into that. So yeah, that's been the biggest change, and hopefully, I think it's going to be the most successful change in a lot of ways, because none of this would have been powerful or possible. None of the ritual rules, for instance, would have been possible without the Adventure Edition. And I think that's going to just, when people really start digging into their campaigns and the stuff that their Leyline Walker is going to be able to do with those ritual rules, I think they're going to be like, oh man, this is a huge upgrade to what I can do in this edition of the game.
All right, first yes or no question. I reference all the time the Powers, Mega Powers PDF that just shows the difference. Are we going to get something like that, a cheat sheet that shows, the Mega modifiers? Or
I think so. That's not my decision directly. I mean, I can have opinions, but that's all up to Shane and Simon if they want to print that. But before we had it was just a list of powers, right?
Yeah, but it had the base power and then the Mega thing. I mean, it's a little bit different now I could see it really handy where the powers listed and then the regular modifiers are there and the Mega modifiers, so I don't have to look in two different places.
Yeah, I think that's
power.
That's not that again. I have no problem putting that together. Yeah, that's not exactly a me question.
Jody, are you still on? Maybe if you mentioned that back at the office. Okay, good. That's quick. You mentioned the Master of Magic and that sort of thing. We've had some questions about Techno Wizards. Do they have Master of Magic to start? Can they get it? What's going on with that? What's going on with the changes to Weird Science? People just seem a little bit confused about that. It's not 100% clear.
Yeah, so Techno Wizards do have access to the Master of Magic Edge, although as of right now, they do not begin with it. But yeah, that's definitely something they can take. That is something that we have added some language to try and clarify how that is used and applied. And so as soon as we can, we'll be getting that. I know that Simon is finishing up work on Arcana and Mysticism for the playtest release. And so once that's out, I think the next thing you'll see is a big update to the Tomorrow Legion Players Guide. And so yeah, hopefully everybody can be patient until they see that and give us the feedback. But I think we should have a lot clearer language in there for everyone.
Good. It's just sticking with Weird Science for a second. There's kind of a weird twist with bringing core Weird Science into Savage Rifts, which is neat. Now the big question is, can people who don't normally have, because you're changing it now, so it's just called PowerPoint. So we have a whole third system of points, as it were.
It's the base system, yeah.
Yeah, the real system of points without the trademarked language on it. But does that mean, like, if I'm a Grackltooth who doesn't have access to PPP or ISP-based backgrounds, or a juicer or a cyborg even, could I take that core Weird Science?
Yes. So the core Weird Science concept, I think, is awesomely done in the Adventure Edition, and it's in a lot of ways it's actually quite a bit different from how Techno Wizardry was approached, right? I mean, it's even moved further since the changes for the edition. I think the Techno Wizardry still works. We've done a lot of work on that, and again, we welcome as much feedback as we can get because we really want to get Techno Wizardry right. I know some people have told me they just don't understand it when they go read through it, and other people are like, I don't understand. I get it. When I read it, I get it, and other people are like, they tell me I need to make it clearer, and I ask where to make the changes, and they just say, I don't know, I don't understand it. Like, it's just a big giant question mark for them. So hopefully that's not the case moving forward. Again, welcome lots of feedback there, and suggestions on how to phrase things differently or what might be clearer, where we might need examples. But with the Weird Science arcane background from the Adventure Edition, we're trying to make sure that that's an option, a lower powered option. You don't get access to the mega power modifiers, but something that other characters can tinker with. I think that's very Rifts. It does use the PowerPoints. It does use standard PowerPoints, and it does not. Therefore, it does not allow you to manipulate Techno Wizardry gear. At the same time, we're also adding requirements for smarts and skill requirements are coming in an update, and so you'll see how all that works. But the idea is that it is a different power source. It is a different. It does have a different. It's technological based, right? It's not PPE or ISP or anything like that. And the idea is that there is a special modifier for it as well, that if someone wants to drain power points or dispel it or disrupt it, then there's an additional -2 modifier. If you notice in Suede, there's a -2 modifier if you're trying to affect a different flavor of arcane background with those type of powers. And so if someone's trying to do that to your technological weird scientist, then it's an uphill battle because they have an additional -2 applied. So those are the ideas behind that one.
Right. So someone was just asking, so in the version 3, I guess they couldn't use TW items, but as a kind of a payback, they had the mega power modifiers available. So that's coming out.
So yeah, I mean, so they're not going to be able to use mega power modifiers. They're not going to be able to use Now, the edge itself doesn't allow you to use TW items, right? The power points are strictly for use with that power edge. And then we do have a sidebar about the multiple arcane backgrounds. So these are all, if somehow a character gets a hold of multiple arcane backgrounds, they're each supposed to be using edges, power edges, and everything separately from each other. So if your character has Master Psionic, that doesn't mean that you get access to mega power modifiers for his techno arcane or techno weird scientist.
Right. That makes sense. What if you end up with 2 arcane backgrounds that both have PPE? I don't know how it would happen, but say miracles and magic or something.
And it would still have to be taken separately.
But even in your base PPE, could you use it for both, either or?
I guess if you had miracles and magic, yeah, I guess it would be. That's a weird one. Yeah.
Those are things players ask, man. I'm just telling you right now.
Yeah. That one I think is one. Maybe that's one of those ones we need to put in there and say you got to do one or the other. I don't know. I don't want to limit people, but yeah, I think you would then just build on one core PPE pool there. But I think that would be a disadvantage, right? Because then you wouldn't be gaining more PPE from one of the arcane backgrounds.
Right. You could still only take it once per rank, so you'd grow slower, even though you started higher.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair. Timmy, you keep asking about Side Stalkers. Post your question in the live chat because I have no idea what your question is at the moment. I'm not going to look at the forums.
There were some questions about Side Stalkers. Yeah, I saw.
Yeah. I mean, one we talked about in the pre-show a little bit about how does their pace thing interact with fleet-footed.
Yeah,
if you take the Wilderness Scout package.
Yeah. So with that, I think what we need to do is go back and make sure that I'll have to look at the other races and make sure that we don't have anything where they need to use the pace racial ability, positive racial ability, as opposed to using an edge in that case. Yeah.
Simple fix then.
It's simple fix, mechanically, basically the same type of thing, but yeah.
So related to that, and it comes up a lot in Rifts because you can get a hero's journey roll or fortune coolery or a iconic framework that starts with a skill or has a skill or whatever. So when you have skill bumps from various sources, how do they kind of stack? So like I start with D8 and fighting as a Cyber Knight and then I get something, or
yeah.
And then of course there's also the attribute caps that sometimes affect skills, and then how do you deal with that? It's a weird interaction, and I've never seen a lot of clarity on it.
Yeah, well, and some of that some of that comes from the idea of, and I'm sure everybody's seen the new character creation summary, which helps put order to some chaos, which was hard to figure out before, I think. But you choose your iconic framework first, and then you choose your race, and I think that's important to have. And then you're building, and then you make your hero's journey rolls. So one of the things we're trying to do with the hero's journey rolls is make sure that in a lot of cases it's just giving you extra points to buy skills with, or we upgrade the skill by a die type or so many dice or whatever, and that's in an effort to make sure that entire process is more deconflicted. Technically, though, if if your framework says you have a D6 healing and then your hero's journey roll says you have a D6 healing, technically you just have a D6 healing. You take the highest of the two, right? But that's why I think that we're trying. Well, it's not. I think we are trying to get through that and make sure that it's deconflicted in the way that it's built out in the hero's journey tables now. So if you see something that hasn't been updated or isn't fixed when we come out with the next big update, please squawk on the forums. Heck, you can put it in the formatting. There's a special formatting, list or what is it, topic. Just put it in there because that's at this point it's basically a formatting error.
Great. So just jumping back to Sci Stalkers for a second, because Timmy has finally caught up to us. Their detector it's innate, that ability. How does that work? It's just always on, or how does that actually?
Yeah, it's not an innate ability. It's a sense, right? So it's like a sixth sense. So that is one that I don't think should be an innate ability and should be approached as a sense. And we want everything you can do with it. Some people were asking, well, can I add mega power modifiers to it? And the concept is no. The concept is it's an ability or is wholly on its own, and anything it should be able to do lore-wise, if people have a concern lore-wise or balance-wise, anything it should be able to do should be in the base description. So if we need to make any updates there, please let us know. But that was intentionally not turned into an ability or an innate ability, or an innate ability or a power that you could add modifiers to. I think is a better way to put it.
Right. Then just how does feeding work if you kill or incapacitate a mage? Do you still require a post-spirit roll? Can you cut him and drain him in the same round? Just the mechanics, I guess.
Yeah. I think I have an update incoming on that as well. So to make it just a little bit clearer, but in general, if you read the example that we have there, yeah, if you incapacitate them or kill them, then it doesn't require an opposed roll.
Good. Jumping back a little bit, somebody had asked, maybe you mentioned somewhere that vampires are changing a little bit in a recent update. Is that true? Is there any changes to how they work?
Not any big changes to how they work. Except for the fact that basically you need to have holy water. If it's not just a rain.
That's quite good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if it's magically imbued or holy water, then it works, right? But if it's not, it doesn't. I just wanted to make that clear because sometimes you just get some weird things like when vampires not wash their hands. I mean, I don't know. But there's some weird things, some weird interactions that can come up in the setting. And so that was something that we wanted to make sure was clearer in the new edition, that it needs to be of magical or holy origins in order to do all that damage like acid on a vampire.
Right. Jumping back or maybe around a little bit, somebody was asking about, you brought up the concept of Rifts being a thinking man's game. My experience is Rifts is a stand and shoot them game. So is there any kind of guidance, or are the adventures structured in such a way that are in there to kind of highlight the thinking aspect of it, as opposed to just the blasting the heck out of things aspects?
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that, so I'm finishing up the Game Master's Handbook and stuff right now. And so that's one of the things that I added an entire new section about horror and running horror. I call it high octane horror, because I think you still can do it. It's just that you have to realize that. So if you're playing a horror game, I mean, like, okay, so if we've seen this in a million movies, right? If you just want to take movies as tropes, you could take a movie where you've got a small, slightly built woman, and have you ever seen that movie Red Eye, the old movie, or different movies like that? But there are a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies. One bad man can be horror for a woman or a child, or someone elderly, and then you can just dial it up from there, right? And so I think that Rifts is kind of pushes that to the extreme, to the Avengers kind of level, where they worked really hard in those new movies, to show you how horrific it is if Thanos wins, right? And so why he has to be stopped. And I think that Rifts is the same way. You have to provide the same kind of challenge for your players, or else they're not going to be forced to think. And I've told this before, and I hate to repeat myself, but I think that it's important to get it out in a forum like this. Is, you know, one of the things that I did is I've been running an adventure at camp with friends and with at conventions where I actually had the players start out in it's December 2098, it's the apocalypse, and they're NEMA troopers. So they're not heavily armed. They're fairly well skilled. They're not even up to a Mars standard, no Mars framework standard, and the characters fight, you know, demons and monsters and all types of stuff. And when I was running it at ChupacabraCon, one of the players, when they at the very end, they were fighting giant demon, and they shot it with the plasma ejector, the plasma rifle that the big soldier character had, and it didn't do anything. It just bounced off of it, and they realized, oh wow, that's not going to affect it with just a standard shot. And he almost got up and left the table for like half a second. I could tell. He was like, "We can't hurt it. That's it. This is dumb." And then they busted out all the different ideas. They were distracting it so that they could throw a grenade down its throat. They were shooting in the eyes. One character grabbed a fire hose for, you know, it was on the roof of a building was where the showdown happened. And they were doing all types of creative stuff. And next thing you know, a few rounds later, it was a tough combat because there were other demons and monsters in the same skirmish. There was broad kill, and then they had allied National Guard troopers with them fighting, and it's pretty awesome battle at the end, and a bunch of people died, but they won. And so I think that's an example of, and they beat a Neuron Beast. That's a pretty tough Rift foe. And so these were not even Mars level characters. And the thing that I thought was really cool about there's some really great things about Savage Worlds, right? So now you can do these different tests against them using a fire hose, right? Using whatever to make them distracted or vulnerable. You can try and bypass their armor. I like throwing a plasma grenade down the monster's throat. I think that definitely bypasses some armor, right? So there's a lot of different things you can do, and I think that tactically, in just that tactical situation, there was a lot of a thinking man's game going on there when they realized they couldn't just aim the big gun at it and pull the trigger. Another thing that happens is, I think the players will see this a lot, is how we write adventures is really important. How we run adventures as game masters, how we approach adventures as players is very important. Not to metagame the damage of things. But one of the big things that's coming in the Savage Tales and the plot point campaigns and the 3 new world books is that, and someone called it phase. They've called it phase 3 for the new books in the future. So I guess this is phase 2. We're doing the Marvel thing. So, so with this phase 2 release, I think you're going to see a lot of material that's coming out for adventures where the characters are going to be asked to do a lot of different things that aren't just stand up and shoot fights. Beyond that, just because a railgun or a weapon has a range of, a mile or 10 miles or whatever, there should be terrain, right? Bad guys know this. Good guys know this. Everybody knows the basics of I would say most denizens of Rift's Earth know the basics of modern combat, right? And so they're gonna act and react and plan accordingly. And the game master really needs to be on his A game that way. Especially if you're going free form or doing your own campaign material, I think you need to be very careful to not just say, okay, the Samus suits are flying straight at the Glitter Boy from 10 miles away. Okay, Glitter Boy, shoot him, right? I mean, that's just boring. But ask yourself, how would players approach the situation? That's one of that's a cheat sheet for myself that I use is, okay, wait, if I was playing this scenario and I was the coalition commander and we had, some sensor readings that there's a Glitter Boy targeting system or laser or, who knows, emissions, electronic emissions. I worked in Intel, so I don't know if you guys have ever heard of ELINT. It sounds like electronic lint as well. I remember it. But it's like all different types of war machines give off all types of bizarre signatures and frequencies. So without going into crazy detail, keep that type of stuff in mind. The coalition or different factions are gonna have their different ways of scrying or scanning the battlefield or just the knowledge they might have picked up from previous things that have happened in the area. Reputation, infamy, right? And so they're not going to approach that same type of situation as let's just fly straight at him and attack. They're going to try and set up ambush, approach from valleys or forests or who knows what, right? You could do anything, right? If you know where the enemy's trying to get to and what's in between, then you can plan really great ambushes, right? So take all of those things into consideration. And I think that you can have a lot more interesting combat encounters as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, I hope you wrote all that down. He asked if there was anything to talk about in counterbalance in the GM's guide. Either our players walk all over it or they're all dead at the end of the day. But,
yeah, I've written some more in there. One of the things, and it's tough as I'm going through the different entries in Savage Foes, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? Just like each monster is at least as complicated as an iconic framework. And that's not easy to juggle all at the same time. So you have to have some player buy-in. I think that a lot of people are used to just running, and I like running Savage Worlds just off the cuff. But if you've got a big monster that has a bunch of different powers and edges and abilities, I did add some stuff in the Game Master's Guide about this. Take 5. Right? Let everybody go take a bathroom break or grab a drink and look through those edges. Refresh yourself on the edges, right? Look up there's the kind of cheat sheets in the Adventure Edition where you can look at the different powers and see their basic breakdown. You can see the basic breakdown of all the different edges and hindrances. Actually, that's another thing that I've been working really hard on is making sure that we've got flavorful and interesting and impactful hindrances on characters as well, because now a lot of them actually have mechanics or are very interesting, and so keep all those things in mind because we put them there for a reason. And so when you take a look at those hindrances, to look at the target's motivations or how they might react in a battle, are they cautious? Are they instead what's that? Off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of it. One moment. Ruthless. That's it. Are they ruthless? Are they hesitant? There's all different types of things that can be affected there. Look at their edges, and then look at the powers that they have, and then look at their special abilities. And so, a lot of times, this is one thing that Sean Bircher showed me. You can write out something as a special ability, but if it's essentially an edge, or could be expressed as an edge or a power, we'll express it as an edge or a power, right? And so that's one of the things to take. And I'm trying to pare down the power lists. I don't want to take away the flavor, but I also don't want like 99% of the powers just in one block. And take a look at how those things, my whole point is to take a look at how all these things interact. Because you might be surprised how some of these edges and powers and then a special ability interact. And so, even if you need to, maybe even take some notes. Oh, when I run this monster, these three things interact in a really interesting way. And so that's something to really keep in mind to make sure that you're getting all of the mileage you can out of your monsters. I think that's really important. And then when it comes to your standard troopers and stuff like that, Empires of Humanity has a whole section on squad loadouts. So I updated I mean there was already a little passage in there in the Game Master's Guide, but I updated a little more about how squads or different enemies, groups of enemies should have ways to approach different types of targets, in combat, say like anti-tank or anti-magic or whatever. But same thing with your coalition squads. We've got really good guidelines there now. But yeah, you should definitely take a look at those different weapon systems and how they might be best used against various types of foes. Another thing, don't forget, this is one thing that Beacon talks about. Use your grenades for your coalition grunts. They've all got grenades for a reason. As well, I would say that you have your different coalition troopers or demons, whatever it is. Remember that your magic users have power activators now, so they have to be able to. They can't be entangled or bound, right? They have to be able to speak freely in order to cast their spells and use their powers. And so I think that's another thing to consider is just running up and tackling them, ganging up on them, 2 or 3 dudes if you have to, right? To try and deal with that. Again, with the Glitter Boy, if you can get into hand-to-hand range, you're pretty much home free, right? If you've got someone that's about a hand-to-hand hoss. So, smoke grenades. Does anybody even use smoke grenades against the Glitter Boy? I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do. And I think that, just think about it as how our player group would try and take on a similar type of situation, especially if they're outclassed.
Great. Well, that all needs to go into a blog post of the GM's Guide or something. We should all know it, but sometimes we just say, "Oh, you're being attacked. Roll the dice. Oh, you're being attacked. Roll the dice."
I encourage everyone to read, especially the Running Savage Rifts section of the Game Master's Handbook. Give it another read because it's been tweaked and updated with some important updates and advice that I think will go a long ways towards building the right atmosphere in your campaigns. And also has been, some of my suggestions. I think it was really well written in the first place, but I have made sure that, and I've been listening to the feedback too, right? So if there are things that I keep hearing like this, then I'm putting that in there as well. I'm trying to emphasize it in that new text as well to make sure that it's clear to the game master different ways to approach these things.
But sometimes you need a really big bad guy, and somebody's asked over and over again in the chat, are there going to be vampire intelligences?
Yes.
Good.
Oh, you guys want big bad guys. I mean, we've got Nixla in Arcana and Mysticism, so it doesn't get much bigger than a vampire intelligence or Nixla. Yeah, we've got big bad guys. Sometimes you do just need a really big bad guy. You're right. And hordes of bad guys. And that's the other thing, man. I mean, okay, well, this is Savage Worlds. I don't know if you guys have ever tried this, but if you think that, well, they just seem to be trouncing the 10 Skelelots, what about 30 Skelelots? I mean, and does 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 Skelelots have a CR1 rocket launcher? Do they have, are there other weapon systems? Okay. If there's a squad, it's just if you're hitting the totally wrong power balance for the encounters, it's really hard when you're writing adventures to know exactly what is going to be in that group, right? Sometimes how do I put it? As I'm going through these adventures and updating them and making sure that they use the adventurer's toolkit, different things like chases and dramatic tasks and things like that. I'm trying to make sure that the squad and enemy compositions are written up to be more relative to a group size. That's still not a perfect framework. So you're going to have to obviously apply what you think is necessary for your group. But I am trying to err on the side of going a little tougher for the enemies instead of weaker when it comes to encounter balance. So I think it's a little easier for a game master to give the players an out and for them to be able to retreat with something that no one expected.
Sorry, what's that word you used?
Retreat, yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard that word.
Okay. Yeah, it happens sometimes when you play games that have horror themes. So yeah, that's another thing to consider. We are working towards horror, and that requires player buy-in. Again, I wrote a lot up in the section, this new section for the Game Master's Handbook, but definitely please read that. But it does require buy-in, and when tension starts to ratchet up, everyone needs to be working together to create that atmosphere at the table. If whether you're the game master or the player, if you're making, you know, too many jokes or any jokes really, you could break the tension when you're not supposed to, when you don't need to. You can, if people are distracted doing, not having good table etiquette, that can really mess it up. So if you want to have that feeling, I think a lot of people want to have that feeling with riffs. I know I really enjoyed that about riffs when I was younger and playing with that in different scenarios. I don't think it has to be in every game, but or every session. Does that make sense? But I think that certain times it's calls for it, right? And it'll just come off as really campy if you don't do it right. So definitely try and make sure to check that out, and let me know if you have any more questions and stuff, or if you guys would like, I have been thinking about starting a YouTube channel and doing weekly videos on things like that. So maybe I'll do that. Yeah.
We're here to help, man. We figured this one out. We can figure out anything. Yeah, we're coming up on about an hour. I don't want to, have this to be a 2-hour live show or something like that. Mostly because my bladder is not that big. But maybe you drink out of a giant cup. Show off. But I'm an old man. So I think that there's been good stuff. There's lots of good changes. I mean, I'm basically a fan. I don't see it as nerfing, but somebody I thought did ask a good question in our forums, which is like, okay, kind of maybe Savage Rifts out of the gate was over the top, power, good, fun. Savage Worlds itself is, you could die with a little goblin with a dagger. What kind of level are you looking for here?
Yeah.
This kind of revision.
Yeah. So with this revision, again, so with bringing back in the horror element a little more prominently in the setting, I actually discussed this quite a bit with Shane. Is how to make sure that we can do that properly, and part of that is, as people have noticed, we've walked back the starting line, right? It's really easy to say, okay, for this campaign, and I'm adding a sidebar for it, that everybody starts with 5 extra heroes journey rolls, or you get 3 advances or whatever, 10 times the starting credit allowance for your standard equipment. But it's really hard to dial that number back. And so that's been done very intentionally to reduce the number of heroes journey rolls. Now you still got that most iconic frameworks, you've still got the magical number of 2, so that you can still, if you're playing it crazy and you want to take some crazy power that's not on your power list, trade out your 2 heroes journey rolls and go pick that hero's journey table result that lets you choose a power that's on your power list. Boom, done, right? Now you can create whatever kind of crazy you want. At the same time, we're dialing this back so that the characters are, I think, still more powerful than in a lot of ways than they were in the original riffs coming straight out the gate. Now, with the original riffs as well, I don't think, with the way that your skills and the bonuses to skills and everything were put together, I don't think you had quite as much versatility and character creation as you do in riffs for Savage Worlds. I think that's a great thing especially about the Adventure Edition, with all the new hindrances and edges and stuff that we've got. So in that way, I like to keep that diversity as much as possible. But I think that you're just a little, you're shy of the. I think that the first edition of Savage Rifts, we were definitely coming out the gate. You were big damn heroes, and actually that's what I'm titling the next level up after the baseline that we've established in the second edition is literally on the chart titled Big Damn Heroes. So there is going to be a power level listed for that if that's the way you want to roll. That's totally cool. There's nothing wrong with it. But we wanted to make sure that the options are there. And it's kind of the same with the philosophy with setting rules. The setting rules now Suede, the Adventure Edition, has actually shifted. So for instance, it's harder to die. You have to roll a critical failure instead of a 1 or less on your bleed out roll. You don't get wound penalties when you're trying to make a healing check, right? So the Savage Worlds, the Adventure Edition, is less deadly. So for instance, the Blood and Gore setting rule has been established to help dial it back to that higher level of deadliness. And there's a big update coming for the Death and Defeat chart. But with all that in mind, it's still deadly, it's still mean, but yeah, you need a certain amount of tension there, I think, and I think that I hope we're hitting a good spot for riffs.
Good. Let's do some rapid fire questions from the chat here.
And real quick, I'll just say with the setting rules, if it doesn't work for your group, you can still turn them off and switch them on. I mean, this isn't supposed to be like the end all be all, but we do need to have a standard list. And so that's the idea behind setting rules. If I don't provide, for instance, Blood and Gore the way it's written, no one has the option to play it the way it's written, right? But if you don't like it, you can turn it off, or you can turn off different aspects of it very easily. But we do need to provide a baseline, and that's the philosophy behind that. Because I know some people are like, I don't like Blood and Gore, and that's okay. You can turn it off.
Right, just pull the levers for your game, right?
Yeah, but we want to make sure the lever's on the wall for game masters to pull if they want to use it.
So are Stormspire and Dwemer in the upcoming books?
Yes.
Is the Psi Nullifier in there?
No.
Why not, loser? Okay. Is there a third Rich Edge coming? Rich, filthy rich, cosmic rich, stupid rich, 1%.
Rich coming, yeah. I'm probably going to put that in the. I think I'll fit that in the field.
Are the Splugorth covered in these books?
Nope. The Psi Nullifier isn't, but the Nega Psychic is, just so everybody knows.
Oh yeah, how's that work?
There's special abilities. They've got a disrupt magic ability and a greater arcane resistance ability. That's
cool, man. I like it. So what are you most proud of in the new books?
In the 3 new world books?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I did Empire, so that's the one I'm really proud of. Let's see. I'm really proud of the arcane or the intelligent construct rules. I think those are going to be that players can do a whole lot with.
They're going to be customizable or variant cyborgs.
Way more than that. You build them from the ground up.
Geez.
With the source book 1, like robot build rules, it's like that. But it could be a golem, it could be a robot, it could be something crazier from another dimension. It really could be just about anything.
Right. I already talked about, is there going to be a third Rich Edge, but Rich and Filthy Rich, you've made some changes to those?
Yes. So basically it's standardized so that each one gives you 2 choices on a hero's journey table that's listed there. We have included the arcane item table into that because I think that's legit. And then it's not the first 2 aren't not going to allow power armor or robot vehicles, but I think that we do have a vehicle option if you want to trade out some of those rolls for a vehicle. The stupid rich one, if it sees print, will basically allow the choice of a power armor or robot vehicle. But the idea, the thought behind that is just, yes, how many build points is a power armor suit or robot vehicle worth. And I think that five or six build points is pretty close to it. You still got to take the power armor or robot vehicle jock, right?
Mhm.
And the skills that are prerequisite to it. So, which is piloting and electronics now. So I think that it's still, I mean, in total, that's over 10 build points to get that.
Unless I just want to take it and sell it, right? That's the argument. I think it's a stupid argument, but that's the argument.
Argument too. I mean, a Glitter Boy character could take his Glitter Boy and sell it, and then go get a full bionic conversion and buy a castle and another robot vehicle. I mean, just if you really, I mean, that's just, if someone's going to do that, then just tell them no. If you're the game master, we can't. Yeah, we can't.
I need that on a T-shirt. No.
Okay. No, just no. N-O on a shirt.
So I think the answer to this is already no. The 3 galaxies in Phase World, there's no license for that.
We do not currently have the license for that. And I said this on another podcast. But, if someone asked me if we had the license, I mean, we don't, right? But if we had I mean, we probably could. But even if we did have the license, and someone said, "Well, when are you going to do Wormwood or Phase World or whatever?" I'd be like, let's get through with Earth first. I think that's the important part. I mean, all the stuff's there. It's out there. And grabbing the companion and running Phase World is, I don't think, that hard. That's one of the great things about Savage Worlds. Ride up a few spaceships in an evening, and you could be pretty much ready to run Phase World, right? So I really, not that Phase World's bad or anything. I think that we want to give the attention to the core Rifts Earth section first.
I agree. Has Kevin played Savage Rifts?
Kevin has played Savage Rifts with the previous design team. I have not played Savage Rifts with Kevin yet. I haven't met Kevin yet, but I'm going to be at Gen Con, so I'm looking forward to harassing him and seeing if he can find a place to sit down with me and chat. But yeah.
Good, man. Gary wants to know if you could choose a fast food restaurant to survive the apocalypse, what would it be?
Taco Bell, man.
Yeah, Taco Bell.
Yeah, it wins the fast food wars, right? The Demolition Man reference, but yeah, I mean, probably, yeah.
How do you decide if a iconic framework gets iconic edges? Because some of them have a buttload and some of them have like none.
Yeah, that's a weird one. Sometimes I think that, I mean, I can't speak for the original design team, right? But that is an interesting one, because sometimes you see things that an iconic framework can do that they shouldn't necessarily be able to do straight out the gate, right? And so that's where I think the iconic edges come in, where you're reflecting the possibility of them growing and advancing over time, or getting extra tricks up their sleeve. So, for instance, with the shifter coming up in Blood and Banes, that they can take different edges, or they get access to power edges that are important, like Dimensional Portal, so that they can do what a shifter needs to be able to do. And that also means, though, that, for instance, if I don't have enough room in one book to do something, then, or if we need a certain something else, a certain framework or something, and down the line, then we can provide that in another book. I mean, so, and that's the other great thing about power edges, right? That are available, or professional edges that are available, not specified to an iconic framework. That means that you're leaving open a lot of options for other things down the line to be able to pick that up. So, for instance, and this is maybe just my personal, I haven't really thought about it. My personal design philosophy is to try and leave things open for the future. So, for instance, the possess others, the mentally possess others power edge in the LPG that we added. When I wrote that up, I wanted to create something that was special for the Mind Melter, but I didn't actually limit it to the Mind Melter directly. It doesn't say it's an iconic edge for the Mind Melter, because what about if we do the Mind Bleeder in the future or something like that? So the way that a lot of these are written, it's really actually gated off for the Mind Melter pretty much. but in the end, it could potentially be taken by other frameworks that might have access to the possession power, and then the master psionic edge.
That's a good answer. Somebody asked twice, so we should ask about the Thunder combat hammer. Apparently, it took away some damage it did with its extra bullets. Is that going to be beefed back up, or?
Yeah. So a lot of the weapons got a balance pass. There was a lot of unequal damage that different weapons did, and so we took another look at a lot of especially the melee weapon damages. Just like everything got a balance pass, but that's one of those ones that did take a hit. I went back to the lore and looked at that as well while we were trying to do that rebalance. So I'm open to feedback on that, but everything should be generally somewhere in comparison to a vibroblade or a vibro weapon, which are in a lot of ways very iconic for the setting, and it's what most robot vehicles, even cyborgs, whatever, use. So just like, well, if you look at, for instance, if you look at the Adventure Edition and you look at the melee weapon list, there's usually, if you gain something over a sword or a club, there's some give and some take, right? And that was the idea with the balance pass on the melee weapons. But if players are like, I don't see any situation where this would be advantageous, yeah, we'll take a look at that. But I think, for instance, with certain weapons, there are definite advantages depending on what you're fighting, or if you're getting a raise on your attack, stuff like that.
Cool. Any thought to expanding powers lists for psychics as they take the major or master psionics lists? So it's pretty narrow for psychics, but maybe as they grow, they get access to a bigger list.
Actually, I've already submitted an update because I passed the updates to Simon, and there's already an update in the pipeline that does two things. It more clearly defines the trapping of all psychic powers for your base minor psionics, and also it lists that when you take the master psionic edge, there are some changes that happen. If you already have the mind link power, you get access to mind reading, and then if you have and then it gives you the option to take elemental manipulation. And if you take elemental manipulation, you have to pick hydrokinesis, electrokinesis, ectoplasm, right? So the pyrokinesis, the basics from Palladium riffs, and if you do take the power, then whatever trapping you have for that power for elemental manipulation, you can now apply to your other psychic powers.
Nice. So we're going to see a Psi Slayer.
They're not in this book. They're not in these new books. They're not in Wave 2.
Man. What's the kind of general progression of waves? I think you said in another podcast, kind of North America out was the philosophy you were thinking?
Yeah. So the next book I want to do is the Atlantis and the High Seas book. I don't know if we're going to get to underseas content like Lemuria and the New Navy, and all that type of stuff, because I really want to make sure we do Atlantis correctly. But you got to be able to get to Atlantis, right? And I think there are going to be there's some really great expedition. Well, I think they're great expedition rules coming in the field manual, the Tomorrow Legion field manual. And so I want to make sure that we correctly address sea travel in a meaningful way, so that players can have fun hopping in a ship and fighting pirates and sea monsters and stuff like that, going through the Demon Seas, the Bermuda Triangle, or triangles, as there are all over Rifts, Earth, as they go towards Atlantis. And then after that, I want to hit South America. I think that's just an awesome couple of books. And then we want to move, very similarly to how things were. It's a little different than the Palladium release schedule, but that way we can kind of cap off North America for the major themes. Not that we won't ever come back and do adventure books in those areas. And then just move east is the idea.
Cool. It's not on there, but related to sea travel, are we going to see some stuff for like opening rifts that actually do things as opposed to kind of controlling and manipulating? You know, like so you could go somewhere.
Yes.
Travel.
Yep. That's in Blood and Veins.
Great. Do we get big bore guns, big bore shotguns, big bore guns?
Empires of Humanity. Yep.
You wrote that.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
I think it's great.
I'm biased. Forget you. Somebody asked about the breed advantage for dog boys. How come it's only physical stuff? How come it maybe couldn't apply to smarts or spirits?
I didn't write that originally, so I don't think that's. I mean, I think that if you're playing your character's German Shepherd, just take another D8 to your smarts. But that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the philosophy behind that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fairly balanced, though.
Seems to work. Oh, where do you see yourself in 30 years? Are you going to still be writing riffs like Kevin?
I hope so. I was asked on another podcast, like if you could buy any one IP and money weren't an issue. I mean, if Kevin wants to pass the torch to someone, I would love to pick it up. I'll put it that way. I really love riffs. I think it's a really great, and I mean, I love the multiverse, right? The megaverse that it has. I love Phase World and Wormwood and all that stuff, and so I'd love to be working on riffs for a long time to come. I think it's just ripe with opportunities to work on. Shane and I agree that this is a really great setting for Savage Worlds. I think that it's a really great property, and it's got a lot of wonderful, I think, very important themes for our society. And so I think it's worthwhile to work on riffs. So yeah, I see myself for, I don't have a super defined 30-year plan, but if you want to, if I function like a communist government, my 5-year plan is definitely 10-year plan. Definitely got riffs in it for sure. As long as I can keep doing it.
Sweet. Somebody asked, can Smite be added to the psionics power list so they can actually be eligible for the Psi Sword Edge? Or is that on purpose? No.
I mean, not for the minor psionics. I mean, that's the trick. Now, actually, that's a good point. I might add Smite to the list when you get to Master Psionic. That's a really good point. But yeah, Smite is. I mean, Smite's the gateway to the Psi Sword. So that's a really good.
And only Mind Melter should have Psi Swords, and it should be better than the Cyber Knights. I'm just saying. I thought you were true to the original.
I mean, I did think it was odd that they were different, but yeah, I mean, if someone wants to start a forum post on Psi Swords and dig into that, I think that right now though it is pretty well balanced, because the Cyber Knight, they really lean very heavily on their Psi Sword, but the Psi Blade of the Mind Melter, he's got a lot of other tricks up his sleeve.
Especially with its free rerolls. All right.
Yes, absolutely.
By the way, Mind Melter, you guys made very small adjustments that made very big differences. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's got a lot of stuff that he can reroll. So that's the other thing. The Psi Blade in the hand of a Mind Melter is still very dangerous.
No kidding. So speaking of like forum posts, what types of things do you find helpful, and what types of things are like, oh God, block?
Well, yeah, I don't like to just shut down discussion about stuff, but I do get annoyed if people keep. I do get annoyed. It can happen. It doesn't. I don't usually get my feelings hurt. I just get annoyed. It's like, all right, I've answered a question, and I feel like that's one of the things I think is very counterproductive. If we have a discussion going on, a lot of times I've seen some people basically tell someone that their thoughts aren't welcome. And I don't like that. I think we need to be very inclusive on the forums. We err on the side of inclusivity, especially to people who might be very new to the Rifts for Savage Worlds combination, whether they're old school Rifts players or whether they're Savage Worlds players or whether they're completely new. There's actually a lot of completely new blood coming in. And I think everyone wants as big a community as possible. So if we want to have as big a community and as thriving a setting and series of books, then we need as many players as possible, right? So that means you gotta accept them in and hug them, not yell at them. The thing that I think is the one thing that I would say is tough is sometimes people will ask questions and about something, and it gets people can be contentious about stuff, and that's okay. I mean, that's why we have this for feedback, right? That's why we're doing all this. But things that for me seems very counterproductive is that I get asked why, and then the answers are, if I logically lay out different reasonings, and then the answers are kind of hand waved away or dismissed. It's like, I mean, I think that a lot of times those posts that I make, they'll get a lot of approved, thumbs up and approval. So I think that most of the people are listening. But if I see someone on the boards that doesn't ask a question like that and doesn't listen, I'm human. I'm probably gonna be less likely to answer the next question or listen to their feedback in the future, right?
Oh man, thank you for taking my call anyway. Then.
No, it's okay. I like discussion, and that's the thing is I like discussion. I like to be able to talk about these things, but I just don't think that sometimes people will be negative or a little ugly about stuff, and it's like, yeah, I might agree with you. There's a reason that I play the Savage Worlds version of Rifts instead of the Palladium Rift, right? So we both probably have very similar thoughts on the that edition of the rules, maybe that we don't like that style of play, but you don't have to be ugly about it. There's people that enjoy that, and rightly so. It's a very cool game, right? So I just a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more positive, being a little bit more thoughtful, I think can make a big difference on the feedback forums. In general, I think the community is really good about that, but those are the things that I find to be the most positive, and I'm number. Yeah, that's also what sways me the most, is if someone can lay out logical arguments and counterpoint without getting, too frustrated. Helpful.
Nice. I know our community is very good at arguing, so I'm sure you're seeing lots of logical reasoning from the Savage Risk people.
In general, I think it's very positive.
Yeah. So I thought it's been excellent so far. And your guys' responsiveness, both with Suede and now that we know that that's the approach you're taking with Savage Rifts, it's just been great.
Yeah, it's very important to Shane. So I'm really glad to be able to be a part of that because we really do want this to be the best version of the rules possible.
Great. Juicers, we're going to see more variants?
Oh, yeah, they're all coming, man. So the way we approached it when I wrote it up in Empires is they're juicer upgrade treatments. And so for some of the more powerful ones, you're getting you may be using a point of burn as you go through that mega juicer process. For instance, with the Titan juicer, you're also gaining the non-standard build negative racial ability. But yeah, you're gaining a lot. So I think they're very cool. I think people will enjoy them. There was something that was important to me to get in there is the different juicer treatments.
Nice. Do you give out free hugs?
I don't do hugs generally unless I know.
Oh boy, I knew I liked you. Just a question for myself, since I'm here. Juicers, I really like what's happening. I like what's happening with Burn. I liked Burn to begin with, and I think it
was great.
Even better now.
Absolutely.
The corollary to that in my mind is the crazy, who actually gets kind of worse over time. At least the juicer, he's burning, but his die goes up, or he gets something to do. The crazy just adds an hindrance, and I think that's accurate for what's happening to them. They're literally degrading. But is there anything that can be done, kind of like from I'm getting crazier, but I'm more ballistic or something? Balancing that out a little bit.
Well, they do have access to a lot of really cool iconic edges.
Right.
So I will say that if you look at the iconic edges, the juicer only gets access to a few of the crazies, right?
Until he can take all his variants.
What's that? Well, now
he gets all his variants.
Yeah, but it's not
Where's my Crazies World book, Sean?
That is reductive, okay? is I do think it's reductive to compare iconic frameworks to each other too much. That can be very reductive because it's not. Well, everything wasn't created balanced in the first place. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to do a balance pass on any of this, right? We wouldn't have any negative player feedback to incorporate because everything was perfect to begin with, and it's not.
Yes, you would, because players are players. But all right, fine.
But I'm trying to answer the question though.
No, I'm with you.
At the same time, not everything's balanced against each other. That's very true. The crazies, a lot of people look at them as being very nerfed or hurt. I just think they're very powerful. I think they were very powerful before. The fact that they had access to basically the Mind Melter's power list, the abilities of the Juicer, right? They got to lose it, got all these iconic edges, but and I think there are other things that were really good that were overlooked. The fact that they can use Techno-Wizardry items. And you might say, oh, well, Techno-Wizardry items, yeah, there's a few of those, but there's a lot more now. I don't know if you've noticed that I've added a lot of Techno-Wizardry items to the Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide. And we have basically just about everything else I could find for North America. All the major stuff is in the new books as well. So Arcana and Mysticism and Blood and Banes, you just got a laundry list of new Techno-Wizardry items and gear. I think the fact that the crazy can use that out the box is very powerful. So yeah, in that way, I think that is appropriate. Along with the regarding the crazy going crazy. I mean, that's a crazy. You're playing a crazy. That is kind of the name of the game. And so at some point, yeah, the crazy might get so nuts that you just have to hand that character sheet to the game master. I mean, at some point you might have to make that decision. But I think that fits it. I think that fits. It's very thematic. Along with the more advanced crazy variants and stuff like that, I think that it needs to be handled lore friendly. Which I think is also very balancing in that the juicers definitely pay for the options they get with the juicer upgrade treatments. But when we get to Europe and Mineworks, there's a lot of possibilities there with the crazies as well. So that's something I'm actually looking forward to a lot.
Good. I'm just pushing because, I speak for everyone.
Absolutely. That's one of those, and it's literally like the crazy, like questions about why is the crazy this, why is the mystic that, if people think they're getting nerfed or whatever. That's one part of the reason that I want to come onto the podcast. That's part of the reason I want to talk to the community is it's hard to address it in a forum, literally a forum typing. And sometimes I think that's not the best way for people to intake the information. So I do enjoy that part of the discussion. I'm not afraid of those questions.
Good. Okay, so they really hounded me to ask about the Cyberknight code. In Rifts, it was really written out what it was, what it meant. Is we going to see any more definition around that or expansion of that?
I don't think anyone's really. I haven't checked So my approach to the forums, by the way, is that I'll post and then I'll give it like a week or two, or a couple weeks at least, to kind of ferment and let everyone hash out and discuss ideas, because I think that's a real positive way to do it. I do read every post. I haven't really seen a lot about the Cyberknight code specifically.
Well, only two guys are asking me, but they're really insistent. So.
Well, no, that's not a bad question.
John and Rob, I'm talking to you.
But yeah, I didn't have any plans, but if people really want to see that, I'll see if I can fit it in somewhere. I mean, I'm shoehorning in as much as I can, but there is now kind of ancillary to that. I also noticed there were some questions about like the Glitter Boy, making them more unique. With the Cyberknight, the Glitter Boy, and a lot of these members of a faction of heroes, we're working on, and we're going to be coming out with a little more defined rules for what it means to be in a faction, and that you can't join multiple factions, for instance. So if you're a Cyberknight, you can't also be a Justice Ranger. You can't. It's not a collect the merit badges type of thing where you're a Cyberknight, Justice, Tundra, Reed's Ranger. And that membership in the Glitter Boy fraternity is right? You could be an honorary member of Reed's Rangers, but you're not going to be literally getting the faction edge Reed Ranger. But we're coming out with a little more definition regarding being a part of a faction for those type of characters.
Great, man. Well, one thing somebody mentioned, and I agree, you're spending so much time coming on and explaining things to everybody in the community, all the different podcasts and everything. That's fantastic. It makes us really feel part of the process. So I appreciate you taking the time for our questions.
Absolutely.
So in the next book down the pipeline, we hope, Simon Lucas teased us and said it might be this weekend, is the Arcana and Mysticism book. What can we see in there? You're probably not going to add more powers, but will we see more power modifiers or edges that make our mystics and ley lane walkers and shifters even more unique? What's kind of the main thrust in terms of content, other than world content?
No, there's a lot. I mean, with all these books, there's Savage Tales, there's iconic frameworks, there's edges, there's gear. Some of them have Empires has hindrances. So that's the idea. Also, just so people understand that moving forward, that's the idea, is that all this stuff is going to be in future world books as we move forward. For the, let me see. So we've got the Dragon Juicer, the Nega Psychic, the Zapper, and then we've got like the Psy Slinger, and a bunch of the different Dwemer mages, like the Battle Magus, the High Magus, Lord Magus, Psy Warriors, Spirit Warriors, stuff like that. You've got Cactus People, Dwarves, Elves, and Orcs. And the Dwarves, Elves, and Orcs are very Rifts Earth specific, with notes on how they've done, because they're very important on Rifts Earth. And so just notes on where they're very common and things like that. We've got the Cygos. We also have a race of 4-armed giants named the Vron War, because of some intellectual property issues. But there will be a race of 4-armed giants that can run around and do lots of fun stuff. We also have new background edges like Magi of Dwemer or Psychic of Psyscape. And let me see, where is the... I'm blind. The Dream Visions are also something I can't. Oh, here it is. It's a power edge. Dream Vision's a power edge. And so there are different, a lot of different edges. Major and minor item creation is coming. Psi weapon manipulation, which would expand on anyone with a Cyber Knight or someone with the Psyblade power ability. Got Conjurers, Grey Seer. Yep, there it is. Okay, it's a professional edge. Totem Warriors for the Native, Americans. We have Cloud Magic modifiers in the current write-up that might change because of space. There's some things that were kind of on the line how we approached them, but we have a very specific breakdown for if you want to create a Linsreal Sky Knight, how to do that as a sidebar. And then we've got pretty much the entire automaton list for the Colossus, Fire Demon, Ice Drake, Infiltrator, Kalar automatons, a bunch of TW items like TW power armors. Yeah.
There you go, Patrick. TW power armors. I hope you're listening. Oh man, that's going to be great. That's just one book. We got 2 more, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Question about the adventures and just in general, Rifts always seem to advance a meta plot as they went over.
Yeah.
Is that something you guys are going to be doing? And is that all Tomorrow Legion focused, or what's the?
Well, I mean, yeah. So Savage Rifts, I think you could easily. I do have a sidebar in Empires of Humanity about running non-Tomorrow Legion campaigns, especially integrating coalition backgrounds into your campaigns or things that are going on. players have to be ready for that too, because now you're going to be playing a game where you're dealing with a totalitarian government, right? And the players are at the whim of that. So it could end up very like conspiracy theory, all types of stuff. I mean, it can be pretty cool, but everyone has to be willing to play that, right? But the idea is that yes, Savage Rifts for Savage Worlds. Kevin and I have communicated quite a bit, especially. It's like over a year ago now. We did a lot of phone calls, and while I was working on Empires of Humanity, condensing and collecting all this material and giving everyone a really accurate view of what what North America looks like in 109 PA. So what you see in Empires of Humanity is the result of a big effort to update everything about the world and the map at the same time into that one time frame. So I think that a lot of Palladium fans will be very interested in the maps and the different world background, because it's all tied together, and it's
not spread over 40 world books.
Yeah, it's not, and it's all lore, it's all canon, right? Now, in some ways though, this is kind of like an episode of Sliders or something, because you've got the Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide, and what effect does that have? There are missions already that are written up where the players are thwarting the plans of the Calgary Monster Kingdom. So because of things like that and the direction we're going, I don't know if you're going to see. I don't think we'll ever see the Minion War in the same way that it's been hit in the Palladium setting. But at the same time, it's a very canon Rifts 109 mid 109 PA setting. So what that does mean is that I'm very interested in getting the canon correct as we move on with the world books, and not advancing the timeline beyond integrating the Tomorrow Legion and how it might interact in those different settings, in different parts of the world. That said, there's so many cool things you can do with the Tomorrow Legion, and we have not been afraid to advance the storyline in the plot point campaigns. So the Against Nixla campaign in Arcana and Mysticism, I mean, it's about trying to defeat Nixla, right? That can happen. So you can advance the plot line in the setting, and you're given very clear guidelines about all types of crazy cool things that can happen. The same thing happens in the Ex Machina campaign that I wrote, which deals with like Archie and stuff like that. And I don't want to give away too much, because it's one of those ones that kind of relies on different reveals and intrigue to be, I think, most interesting. But yeah, I think that advancing the plot line that way is something we're very interested in doing. I'm very interested in doing a Secrets of Castle Refuge book, and different things that take things forward so that players can move forward with it. But I mean, maybe, who knows what would happen if we're like, oh, we're done. We did it. The war's over. We finished Rift's Earth. If we ever get to that point, I don't know what we might do after that, right? But it's really cool to see people really excited about more storylines and plots and threads, and so that's something that we're very interested to do. And I think there's a lot of ways we can do it, and we're not afraid of telling those. Telling those stories. We're giving the game masters, the players, the ability, empowering them to tell their own versions of those stories, right, in the campaigns. Kind of like in the original Mechanoids material in Source Book 2. There was this huge world-ending, possibly, thing that you were given, right? And that could, depending on how that campaign went, that could change your entire Rift game, right? So same kind of thing. We definitely enjoy doing things like that, and want to keep making new, fresh content that's specific to Savage Rifts and the Tomorrow Legion, and the different effects that they can have on the possibilities of the setting.
That is one great thing, to be able to influence the outcome of the setting, rather than it's just kind of marching along around you, and it keeps advancing no matter what you did or whatever.
I call it like the Star Wars RPG problem. or conundrum, because this happened when I was a kid. We would play the Star Wars, and it's still very. Whenever I play Star Wars with anybody, I've played Edge of the Empire and everything recently, and played a 2-year campaign. We played every week. It was amazing. But do you allow the events of your campaign to influence the course of events that would therefore contradict the movies? Right? That was always our big question. Wait, can we actually show up and be part of the battle at the Death Star, the story of the Death Star in Episode 4 or not? Can we meet Luke or Leia? And these are things that really, when you came down to it, that really defined how our campaign was going to be if we set out that we could or couldn't influence those characters. And I think it's the same kind of very important question when you run a Risk campaign. But generally, our answer is, yeah, if you want to, you can definitely interact with and deal with all these things.
Man, that's so exciting. So, well, when do we see the next version of the Tomorrow Legions Player's Guide for testing?
That's a really good question. I am more of the, so I would put it I kind of get the snowball rolling and pass it along. So I don't want to question all the work of the other people that are cleaning up my mess behind me. As you could look at it 2 ways. I'm getting it started, or you could just look at it as I'm the guy that's going through with the wrecking ball or the sledgehammer and blazing a trail, a machete, and then there's other people trying to clean up the path behind me. So for that reason, I can't give a specific answer, but that is something that I want to help make sure we can get that to the players as soon as possible. So it just depends on finishing up some of the current work that I've got with the stretch goal content and stuff like that. And then, Simon being able to finish Arcana and Mysticism and get that to the players. But the goal is that after we get Arcana and Mysticism, that you guys will have the updates to the Tomorrow Legion Player's Guide.
So Arcana and Mysticism is next.
That is next. That is the next thing.
This weekend?
Hopefully very soon. I know that he was aiming for a few days ago. Originally. So these books are just really big, and there's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a lot of important work because, for instance, I don't even know how many authors worked on Arcana and Mysticism, a dozen or something. There's a lot of people that wrote material for this, and the Birchers and I have been through the books and worked on them a lot. It's just very expansive, right? So, and there's all types of little things you'll get where, for instance, what happens when my Psystalker is a wilderness scout? What do I do with the fleet-footed edge? I mean, but there's a lot of stuff.
You say, "Shut up, Tim." That's what you say.
No, I like it because these are a lot of lessons learned, right? How do I make sure not to we don't repeat? We learn from the past, right? And don't repeat this. So
good. All right, so that's it maybe for tonight. I think we can wrap it up. The questions are kind of dried up, and cool. I think we're doing good. But you're going to put in a good word for us. We'll get Sean on here. He wrote Arcana and Mysticism, or was the main guy on that, right?
Yes, I believe so. He was the one that headed up that one.
So you'll put in a good word for us. We'll do a
AMA
with him.
Yeah, message him. He's a great guy. He can come on anytime he wants. Yeah. I don't think he'd have any problem. If you want, I can talk to him, or you can message him. Either way.
All right, good.
I'd probably like to get on and chat about stuff, because she did Blood and Banes, and that's.
I want to get her on for her own time for Blood and Banes. I think that would be fantastic as well.
Blood and Banes is really cool. So they're all really cool books. I'm very proud of the work that everyone did.
We'd like to agree with you, but we haven't seen them yet. So get back to work, Sean. Get back to work, Simon. Jody already went to bed. I do want to give a shout out to her. She's not here, but she promoted this for us, and she even moderated the chat a little bit and answered people's questions while things were going on. So really appreciate how active she is and helpful she was as well. Thanks to everybody at PEG, except Shane, who's never spoken to me.
Don't take it too personally. He's a very busy man.
I'm kidding, of course. Thanks again, Sean, and we're going to sign off here for tonight. Guys, if you have any follow-up questions or whatever, hit up the PEG forums.
Absolutely.
And let Sean know. he's good to get back in kind of obsessive bursts. So we'll go from there.
Yeah, I just try and kind of hit everything at one time and move forward.
Good. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We're signing off. Have a good night and a good week, and stay savage.